Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another Friday episode on Latter-day Saints. We're so grateful to have you here, and we've got a doozy of an episode for you. Some of the highlights that we're going to be going over, the headlines. For OG followers of Latter-day Saints, you know that I did an episode a little while back about the shift from the Department of Defense to the Department of War, and how I kind of see that as fulfillment of Book of Mormon prophecy in not so good of a way. Well, some recent developments show maybe I wasn't wrong, but we'll talk about that. And it appears that a World Cup match scheduled to happen in Portland is causing some controversy, and it's pretty interesting. We'll talk about that. And in our featured story, a new bill passes in the House criminalizing sex change operations for minors. And there's been a mixed bag of reactions to that we'll go over. Anyways, my name is Jackson William Paul, and welcome to Latter-day Saints.
What power shall stay the heavens from pouring down knowledge from heaven upon the heads of the Latter-day Saints?
All right, Hayden, first off, you beat my swag that I'm repping right now, bro?
Yo, it's pretty swag. I like it. Hey, give it a turnaround.
I'll give you a quick turnaround right here.
It looks pretty good, dude.
God is serving, man is serving, God is serving, man. We've got a bunch of orders for Christmas, and yeah, it's in the link in the bio.
You're not going to get them before Christmas, though.
Yes,
if you order now.
You
but
probably won't.
You don't need to just look good on Christmas. You're going to want to look good and share the gospel after, too.
Yeah,
so.
Except if you live in Utah, there's still a slim chance, but no promises. But go to the link in the description, saintthreads.shop. I don't know, after this, I'll set up a little discount code for you. But anyways, pretty sick. HP, you remember that episode? Were you on that episode with me that we talked about the Department of Defense, going to the Department of War?
No, but I was with you in the Marine Corps when we first talked about that together.
Year.
Yeah.
For the last year you were with me.
And we talked about that, yeah.
Yes. So if you didn't know or you haven't watched that episode, the Department of Defense has changed names to the Department of War. Now, you can see that in many different lights. And if you go back to that episode, we talk about those different lights. One, they're kind of just being honest now, because in the wars that have happened since, World War II, maybe the Korean War, have kind of been a lot of preemptive defense, if it were. But which is just offense, and now it's kind of just being overtly put out there. Look, we're the Department of War. And
what is the scripture in the Book of Mormon that talks about that?
The shift?
Yeah, the shift. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the Book of Mormon, we see, first off, Captain Moroni, he sets a good precedence, a good culture in his war fighting and the ethos of it. In comparison to the Lamanites, we learn about the Lamanites' motives for war and battle in Alma 43, verse 44, if you want to pull up scripture notes there. It says, and they, the Lamanites, were inspired by the Zoramites and the Amlicites, which were their chief captains and leaders, and by Zarahemnah, who was their chief captain, or their chief leader and commander. Yea, they did fight like dragons, and many among the Nephites were slain by their hand. Yea, for they did smite into many of their headplates, and they did pierce many of their breastplates, and they did smite off many of their arms, and thus the Lamanites did smite in their fierce anger. Anger was a big motivator of the Lamanite army. They were angry at their Nephite brethren and wanted to kill them. They lusted after blood.
And I just want to point out here, the reason they were angry, it's the same reason that Laman and Lemuel were angry. They felt like they were justified to be the authorities.
Yep.
They wanted power. They wanted to be, the patriarchs of the group, right?
Yeah.
And God and Nephi, through his righteousness, was chosen to do that. And so when you're committing violence for power, you are on the side of the Lamanites, which is not the side of God.
Exactly. And that's exactly what Satan wants you to do. Give in to your anger. If anyone's read this book, The Antichrist Playbook, written by Jeff Borders, it talks about one of the tactics of the adversary is to convince you to give in to your anger. You're justified in that. Give in to it. act upon it. But we then see the motivation of the Nephites in the next verse, verse 45. It says, "Nevertheless, the Nephites were inspired by a better cause, for they were not fighting for monarchy nor power, but they were fighting for their homes and their liberties, their wives, their children, and their all, yea, for their rights of worship and their church. And they were doing that which they felt it was the duty which they owed to their God. For the Lord had said unto them, and also unto their fathers, that inasmuch as ye are not guilty of the first offense, neither the second, ye shall not suffer yourselves to be slain by the hands of your enemies. And again the Lord hath said, that ye shall defend your families even unto bloodshed. Therefore for this cause were the Nephites contending with the Lamanites, to defend themselves and their families and their lands, their country and their rights and their religion." So for a long time, they were on the good side of history, right? They were motivated by good things, fighting against an unrighteous army that was motivated by anger. Now, that lasted for a while, honestly, a long while, up until we see the first shift in that mindset, the first offensive battle. And that's in Mormon 3. If you want to pull up scripture notes there, Hayden, it says, "And in the 362nd year, they did come down again to battle, and we did beat them again, and did slay a great number of them." Talking about slaying the Lamanites. It says, "And their dead was cast into the sea. And now because of this great thing, which my people, the Nephites, had done, they began to boast in their own strength, and began to swear before the heavens that they would avenge themselves of the blood of their brethren, which had been slain by their enemies. And they did swear by the heavens and also by the throne of God that they would go up to battle against their enemies and would cut them off from off the face of the land. And it came to pass that I, Mormon, did utterly refuse from this time forth to be a commander and a leader of this people because of their wickedness and abomination." So what happens? They win the battle against the Lamanites. The Nephites win against the Lamanites. But then after they had won, they're like, we need to get vengeance for our fallen brethren. We need to go out and attack them and be offensive in our war fighting tactics. And we just see shortly after that the result of doing that is not good. In just the next chapter, in verse 4, chapter 4, verse 4, it said, And it was because that the armies of the Nephites went up unto the Lamanites that they began to be smitten. For were it not for that, the Lamanites could have had no power over them. But behold, the judgments of God will overtake the wicked. And it is by the wicked that the wicked are punished. For it is the wicked that stirreth up the hearts of the children of men unto bloodshed. It spells it out right there that was the key to the demise of the Nephite army, is because they shifted their mindset. They were no longer fighting in defense to worship their God, to live peaceably in their lands with their families, and to enjoy the rights and liberty that they had. No, they won a battle, and then they're like, no, we want to get vengeance. We need to avenge our brethren. So then they go and do an offensive battle, and it leads to their destruction. And so that's kind of the overview of what I highlighted in that episode that I talked about my concerns of switching from the Department of Defense to the Department of War. And then just the other night, we see a tweet from Honorable Mr. Trump.
Because background to this, we've been bombing the Venezuelan ships because of drug trafficking. We're fighting the drug, which at the end of the day, to me, fighting against the cartels and against the drug trafficking actually seems like a good defensive move, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is Venezuela makes up like 10% or something ridiculous, not the exact number, of the amount of drugs that flow into the U.S. Yeah.
So if it's really about that,
we should go to Mexico. We should be blowing up the Mexican cartels and fighting them. But we're not doing that. So it's always been suspected that maybe there's another reason.
Yeah. And so what might that other reason be? It might be the same reason that we went to the sandbox not too long ago. But you be the judge. Donald J. Trump says on Truth Social, he says, Venezuela is completely surrounded by the largest armada ever assembled in the history of South America. It will only get bigger. And the shock to them will be like nothing they have ever seen before. Until such time as they return to the United States of America all of the oil, land, and other assets that they previously stole from us. The illegitimate Maduro regime is using oil from these stolen oil fields to finance themselves, drug terrorism, human trafficking, murder, and kidnapping for the theft of our assets and many other reasons, including terrorism, drug smuggling, and human trafficking. The Venezuelan regime has been designated a foreign terrorist organization. Therefore, today I am ordering a total and complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers going into and out of Venezuela. Okay, so let's break that down. He says the ramifications of them not heeding to the United States desires, which is they want their oil back, the land, and other assets. So all the money and things, right? And he's saying then after that they're using these oil fields to do all these things like drug terrorism, human trafficking, murder, and kidnapping. So it seems as though that he's saying that is the reason that we want all of our money and things back, because they are using the money and things to do all these awful things. But like we said, the portion of all of these terrible things that are being committed by Venezuela is very small in comparison to other big players in this same terrorist organization of cartels and drugs and human trafficking. Mexican cartels make up the majority of those atrocities happening in the world. And so if that is the real motive behind it, it seems like we're aiming our sights to a much smaller target. But it seems as though that just like maybe the reason we went to the sandbox, and this is kind of debated, I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially people with military background, that at the same time that we were going into the sandbox, those in the Middle East were threatening to go off the petrodollar, not use the American currency as the world reserve currency. And there's a lot that goes into that. I'll just leave that little Easter egg for you to go do your own research. But it's not very encouraging when I see this and I see the Book of Mormon parallels, how now, oh, you stole our stuff. You're using our land, our oil, our other assets, even though like there was no real conflict up until now. You stole our stuff. We want to get vengeance and we want to get our stuff back. We're going to do an offensive operation to go and use military action to go and get our money and things back. Not super encouraging. And it seems as though this is tracking pretty well with how the Book of Mormon lays out. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Am I up in the night on this? Am I totally reading this wrong? Am I being weak-minded or anything like that? I don't personally think so. I just think that physical violence and war should be the absolute last resort. And just as we see in the Book of Mormon, it's probably a good idea to do it only in defense of our wives, our children, our freedom, our religion, and our God.
Mm-hmm. I think I've done a little bit, but not a ton of research. So take this with a grain of salt and do your own research. But it seems like, as he's saying, that Venezuela has taken U.S. oil and land assets. I mean, this isn't from the U.S. government. These are from American companies in Venezuela who had oil projects down in Venezuela, and then Venezuela decided, as a country, a sovereign country, to nationalize all of their oil. And so because of that, they're like, hey, nobody's allowed here. So they take all those U.S. land projects. Like, at the end of the day, if I wish we would do that with like China and farmland. You know what I mean? Like China is buying up farmland all throughout the United States, and we should just say, no, you can't do that, and then just kick them all out.
Yeah.
Would that justify China coming in and being like, we want our land back in our sovereign nation? So I just look at this and I'm just like, human life is the thing of true value in all of this. That's why we have nations, to protect human life and to protect the rights of human life. Now, if we're willing to spill the blood of other human beings for something, it better be for a really good cause. And I'm just not sure that this is the type of cause that justifies it. I think Venezuela, the regime, yes, it's evil. I think communism and socialism are evil principles. At the end of the day, they're supposed to be a sovereign country, and so are we. And we have a lot of oil assets that are untapped in our country. And so it's like, and I understand that global politics are really complicated. I worry that in an attempt to make the U.S. seem strong, that we're going to overcompensate and we're going to end up causing horror and evil and bloodshed when it just doesn't need to happen.
Bro, that's a terrible take. We need our money and things back.
True.
So let's go point an AR-15 in the face of someone to get our money and things back, because that makes sense. Anyways, I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments below. Love to hear your thoughts. Moving on to our next story. This was
crazy.
This was interesting, bro. And this came out about a week ago, but somehow flew underneath my radar, as a few things often do. But this is from CNN Sports. Everyone out there, CNN's not credible, whatever. Look.
It's sports.
I don't care. But it's funny how they do report on it. It says, how a World Cup match scheduled in Seattle has... I said Portland, I think, in the intro. It's Seattle. Scheduled in Seattle has caused outrage in Egypt and Iran. So it says, long before the World Cup draw was even made, local organizers in Seattle had earmarked a FIFA World Cup match in the city as a chance to celebrate the LGBTQ plus community. But now the two teams involved in the game, Iran and Egypt, have objected to any such celebrations taking place around the stadium. It's fast becoming yet another flashpoint ahead of next year's already controversial World Cup, and one which is likely to test FIFA's credentials again. Okay, so here we have a situation here where I guess during the month of June I think June 26th is when this game is scheduled to happen, that in Seattle, they're like, the theme of this game is going to be celebrating pride.
Gay people.
Gay pride, right? And this was before the World Cup draw happens. So then the World Cup draw happens. The teams who are playing each other is determined, and the locations where they're going to be playing is determined. And it just so happens that Egypt and Iran are the two teams that are chosen to play in this pride game.
So let's take a look at how Egypt and Iran look at LGBT rights.
Yeah, so an equal dex here. Under LGBT rights in Egypt, on the left side, it says homosexuality. Just being like openly homosexual. It's illegal, and the punishment is imprisonment. Yeah, gay marriage is banned. So
the only thing that you can do in Egypt for gay rights is you can donate blood if you're gay, which that's a step in the right direction, because Iran has a different thing to say about that.
It's very interesting.
Oh, actually, you can donate blood in Iran, too.
It's interesting, okay? Then let me know what you think in the comments. But in Iran, don't say Iran like you're some uneducated American. Like you're some...
Okay, fine. Iran.
Iran. So homosexuality in Iran, it's illegal, but the punishment is death.
That's why they make donating blood legal, because they're gonna... They're like, okay, hey, we're doing a blood drive. All right, fill out your sexuality. And then you say that you're gay in it, and then they take you to prison and kill you.
Oh, my God.
It's a trap.
Look, you might think we're talking a little bit cavalier about this, but it's just pretty wild, because to our Western minds, to think that the punishment of just being openly homosexual is death is
insane.
Is pretty absurd and wild. And it's a tragedy that this happens in countries like this. But here's the thing. Do we believe in coincidences? I don't know. This is just really interesting that this happened, okay? Obviously, this is awful that that's how people that identify as homosexual are treated in these countries. But we can all agree that that's terrible. We can all agree. Okay.
What I'm going to say is, you can't, and this is a naive idea that we have as Westerners, is we think that our values can just be forced upon people and they're just going to accept it, right?
Yeah.
And that's the absurdity of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Is there are certain cultures that will just never accept Western values. Now, we don't necessarily agree with the whole LGBTQ plus movement of pushing pride everywhere in the way that they do it.
Yep.
That said, we do believe in the sanctity of life. Therefore, we don't just kill people because of that. You know what I mean? Which Iran and Egypt, maybe they don't kill them, but they put them in prison them, right? Mm-hmm. So it's absolutely absurd. It's just kind of an absurd headline.
So I think one of the important things to look at here is actually comes from one of these quotes from the president of Iran's Football Federation. Okay, he says, both Egypt and we have objected because this is an unreasonable and illogical move that essentially signals support for a particular group, and we must definitely address this point, okay? So what we're kind of seeing here is what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. And over the past, I'd say probably 10 years, the left, leaning side of politics that or left-leaning groups that are pushing these different pride parades and celebrations and stuff have expected everyone else to just adopt their ideologies and have everyone else bend the knee by forced or, threatening certain,
being canceled from your job, being kicked off your team, as they've tried to do that with NBA players, NFL players, MLB players.
If they don't wear the certain pride merch during the pride games and stuff like that. And so
just as Iran and Egypt in many ways are totalitarian in the way that they force Sharia law and things, especially Iran. You look at videos of the 1970s in Iran and, people were normal. You could see a woman's hair. Like it was completely different. And, the regime that's in place now that forces Sharia law upon everybody in his country, like that is just as wicked as forcing other people to accept of a worldview against their will. At the end of the day, if some NBA player wants to wear a gay pride thing, he should be able to wear a gay pride thing. If some MLB player wants to do that, do it. But you shouldn't have to force people to do it. You shouldn't force people to celebrate Christmas. You shouldn't force people to celebrate any holiday. So when it comes to Pride Month, just don't force people to celebrate that don't want to be a part of it.
Facts. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Really curious.
Did we go too hard on this? I don't know.
On Latter Daily Saints, if you watch, we're not interested in shying away from the controversial topics because I think these things need to be talked about because they're surrounding us constantly. We just hope to do it in a way that kind of promotes freedom of thought, and just like Moroni and his boys were motivated by the desire to freely worship God, how, where, or what they may. That's kind of our motive as well. But let us know what you think in the comments. Moving on to our featured story. It seems as though a new bill has been passed in the House. And I specifically picked a headline from an organization that pretty heavily disagrees with this passing of the bill. It says, the ACLU condemns House passage of bill to criminalize transgender healthcare. Okay? It says, Washington today, the House of Representatives voted 216 to 211 to pass a bill sponsored by Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene that would criminalize the provision of gender-affirming medical care for any transgender person under 18 and subject providers to hefty fines and up to 10 years in federal prison. If ultimately enacted, the bill would have immediate and devastating effects on the lives of transgender youth and their families across the country. These medical and mental health treatments, commonly referred to as gender-affirming medical care, are supported by the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, and the American Academy of Pediatrics. At the same time that the legislation criminalizes care for transgender youth, it explicitly endorses non-consensual surgical procedures on intersex youth and infants. So this is an interesting take on this bill passing, right? And if you've done research on what does this actually mean? What is gender affirming medical care? What is that? Okay, let's take a young boy, let's say he's 14 years old, right? Let's say he comes to his parents and he says, I'm a girl. I want to get surgery and hormone blockers and I want to be a girl. What are the actual mechanics of what's happening there? One, if let's say at 15 years old or whatever age, if they go through with a surgery that makes them into a girl from the waist down, they are castrating them. They will never be able to procreate ever again, okay? They will never be able to procreate ever again. Two, when you perform a surgery like that, it's not like some video game that you can just like select another setting and then boop, reset the settings and then suddenly you're a girl, okay? That's not how it works. They do some pretty horrific things to make you into a girl, and guess what? Some awful repercussions happen after that. And just look it up. Anyone that gets a surgery like that, it is so likely that you are going to be dependent on the medical institutions for the rest of your life for healthcare, for follow-on surgeries, follow-on healthcare because of complications during these surgeries. It's not just like a snap of a finger. Oh, you were a boy, now you're a girl. That's not how it works. And there's so many health complications that happen after these surgeries.
Yeah, because here's the thing. A female, and I'm just going to talk straightforward here, a female has a vagina, and a vagina has its own ability to keep itself healthy. It has special bacteria and a way of kind of cleaning itself and making sure that it's healthy down there. When you make a vagina, you're just making a hole inside of a person that doesn't have that same biochemistry in order to keep it healthy. And so what happens is it just festers and it gets sick, and you're constantly getting infections down in your urethra, all this sort of stuff. It's honestly, it's insane bodily mutilation. And a child, an 18-year-old and younger person should not be making that sort of decision ever. And I don't think an adult should ever make that decision. But at the end of the day, an adult can mutilate their own body. A child can't.
And look, if you're thinking we're being a little graphic here, this needs to be talked about. This needs to be talked about because just as it says in Isaiah 5:20, woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Okay? This is happening. People all over the world are calling evil good. Okay? This, if anyone go look at testimonies of people that have detransitioned, that as a child, they got these hormone blockers or they got these surgeries that effectively destroy their health for the rest of their life. And then later in life, they regret it and they want to detransition. And that process is so painful. I invite you to go look and listen to the testimonies of these people that have undergone absolute hell in detransitioning after making these decisions. Mm-hmm. And there's so many double standards, bro. You have a 15-year-old kid walk into a tattoo parlor. Hey, I want to go get a tattoo. They're going to say no. They want to go
drink alcohol, drive. All of those things are way less consequential than chopping off your genitals and changing your hormones. So, I mean, you know, this is obviously conversation that has been talked about many times. And at the end of the day, there are youth that are confused with their gender. There are minors that are confused with their gender. And it's sad. And we should respect them, love them, do the best that we can to guide them. But we should not chop off their genitals, chop off their breasts, or give them hormone blockers. It's not the move. And that's all that this is saying. You shouldn't do that to children. And I think that that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, another reason that I feel it's so imperative to talk about this openly and call this out as it is from reading some verses in Doctrine and Covenants, section 50. If you want to pull up scripture notes there, Hayden. It says, And again, he that receiveth, verse 19, he that receiveth the word of truth, doth he receive it by the Spirit or of truth or some other way? If it be some other way, it is not of God. Therefore, why is it that ye cannot understand and know that he that receiveth the word by the Spirit of truth receiveth it as it is preached by the Spirit of truth? Wherefore, he that preacheth and he that receiveth understand one another, and both are edified and rejoice together. And that which doth not edify is not of God, and is darkness. That which is of God is light, and he that receiveth light and continueth in God receiveth more light, and that light groweth brighter and brighter until the perfect day. And again, verily I say unto you, and I say it, that you may know the truth, that you may chase darkness from among you. I think that we know, especially from just the light of Christ within us, and further clarification from revelations like the family, a proclamation of the world, that gender is an eternal, it is an aspect that is eternal of our nature, premortally, mortally, and into the eternities. It is important and it matters. And it's not by some chance, and it's not something we can just flip a switch, ooh, now I'm different. And I think we can all recognize this and see that this is darkness, and that we can chase the darkness from among us.
And this is why we have to teach our children these things. And, I'm going to do a shameless plug for our Family Proclamation book that was done by Austin Charles. And it's absolutely epic. It doesn't shy away from these controversial subjects. It pulls straight from the Family Proclamation. I think it's the second page. It addresses the gender thing, because it addresses at the beginning the Family Proclamation. But you need to teach your kids these principles. And honestly, the best way of doing that is through a story form. Do you have the passage where it talks about gender?
Yeah.
I think it's the very first, Jack.
Yep. Alrighty. Family, a rhyming proclamation. This is what it says. It says, you lived with your heavenly parents above, a father and mother who filled you with love. You've had a gender, girl or boy, from the start. It's part of your spirit, your body, your heart. And it goes through the Family Proclamation paragraph by paragraph in a fun and very informative way to teach your children and to introduce them to these eternal truths that need to be shouted from the rooftops. And yeah, I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments about things that we can do to proclaim truth, and not in a way that dehumanizes people that struggle with these challenging feelings and things like that, that we can preach truth without condemning the person, and figure out also how we can exercise charity without acquiescing and bending the knee to affirm these falsehoods of gender mutilation of young kids. It's awful, and it is evil, and woe unto them that call evil good and good evil.
Hey, do you think we could? Let's talk about something a little lighter. This got real heavy there at the end. Do we got something good that we can watch?
We do. We have a good note to end off on, honestly. If you know Latter-day Saints, we love the Iron Rodcast. We love the Anderson brothers, okay? Honestly, better than the Paul brothers. Yeah. I believe it, and I stand by that. And they posted an absolute fire reel yesterday, and I wanted to show it to you guys and have you guys react.
All right, let's
Hayden, have you watched this?
I have not watched it yet.
Okay, reload.
Okay.
Cool. That's awesome. But you grew up in Korean. Yeah, tell us more about that. That sounds pretty special, bro.
Oh, for sure, dude. You don't even know the first thing about what they made me do when I was a kid.
What kind of stuff did they make you do, bro? You like drinking blood or something?
Dude, for starters, they let me watch porn and masturbate. In like high school, they didn't let me drink alcohol, dude. And dude, in high school, I had like a serious relationship, and they like never let me have sex with her.
Jeez, dude. Are you guys still with each other?
Oh no, we're not together. We broke up like 5 years ago, but
none of us were allowed to do those things either.
I know you guys like have those standards, but like Mormons are the only people.
Wait, you think that Mormons are the only people that have the standard to stay away from drugs, alcohol, porn, and premarital sex?
I mean, like, yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, dude. You should probably get out and like talk to more people. Anything but it's your friends, bro.
You guys are telling me that you didn't do all of those things in high school? Look, all I'm saying is you guys might be in a cult.
No, yeah. I'm sure I'm rolling true church here, so definitely not me.
Once all you guys recognize that you guys are in a cult, you just come to me. We can be ex-Mormons together.
Classic.
Oh, that is clowning on something funny. Is they act as if having standards, living to a, better way of life of abstaining from these things means that you are suddenly in some high demand psycho organization. And we've talked about this silly trope, high demand religion ad nauseum. But what in life is to produce good results of change if it's not high demand? If you go to the gym and have a gym regimen that isn't high demand, are you going to improve? Are you going to build muscle? Are you going to build endurance? If you don't have a high demand diet, or is it going to be effective in helping you lose weight? If you don't have a high demand XYZ, like it's just having a standard for yourself and seeing the good results that follow. And so, anyways, shout out Iron Rodcast. Anything, last words, Hayden?
Stay curious and hungry. Is that what you say here?
That's not what we do on the phone. Remember, if you are not looking at the world through a gospel lens, you're only getting half the story. God bless you.